Hydra are Nazis. If you've been following comic news for any amount of time over in the last year, then you've probably heard about Nick Spencer's run on Captain America, and how in the first issue, it was revealed that Steve Rogers, Captain America, has secretly been an agent for fascist super-terrorist organization Hydra ever since his origin back in 1941. Oh, wait, sorry, I got that wrong. He was actually altered, his mind was altered by a living cosmic cube named Kobik to believe that he's been a Hydra agent since 1941. Wait, no, I got that wrong again, hold up. No, he was a Hydra agent the whole time, and Hydra, in the real version of the Marvel Universe, actually won, the Axis powers actually won World War II, but then the Allies used a cosmic cube to essentially rewrite Captain America's history, and the history of the world, so that they won World War II, and so that Captain America believes he works for the Allies rather than for Hydra. I think. Honestly, at this point, I'm not going to pay $5 just to try to figure this out, because it's confusing and stupid. Regardless, the point is, Captain America is now a villain working for Hydra, trying to take over the world. Because that's exactly the kind of thing that comic book readers, especially here in America, want to read about right now, right? This story has been mired in controversy. I don't want to ignore that. But I don't want to talk about whether or not making Captain America Hydra agent was a good thing or a bad thing from a storytelling perspective, since that's a matter of opinion. What I do want to talk about is a phrase that I have heard bandied about rampantly in response to this story's criticisms. And that's, Captain America being a Hydra agent doesn't make him a Nazi. Hydra aren't Nazis. This assertion is absurd deflection. Of course, Hydra are Nazis, people! Now, I know what all of you comic book fans, you hardcore people, are gonna be typing right down in the comments. But Hydra was actually established centuries ago. They're an ancient organization who existed prior to the Nazis. They weren't actually involved in the Nazis. Red Skull and Baron von Strucker just took them over later, after the war, blah 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 blah. And you know what? Yes, you are totally right. Secret Warriors did in fact retcon Hydra's origin. As they debuted back in Strange Tales number 135, they were just an evil organization run by a businessman whose name I'm honestly forgetting at the moment. I think it's Arnold Brown, but not sure. But I do think it's pertinent to mention something. This is a retcon. Secret Warriors retconned Hydra's history. Okay? It was not something that was planned out from the beginning. And in fact, while yes, Hydra was run by a businessman at first and not a Nazi, the fact that Baron von Strucker took over it later and essentially became the head of Hydra completely changed the ramifications of what Hydra was back in the original Nick Fury tales. See, here's the thing about Nick Fury. While a lot of people know him as a super spy, he was a war character. He was Sergeant Fury and his Howling Commandos. He is a World War II vet. And it's important to remember that context when Baron von Strucker shows up to lead Hydra, because Baron von Strucker was a villain to Sergeant Fury and the Howling Commandos. Making Baron von Strucker the leader of Hydra in the Nick Fury books completely changes the ramifications and the dynamic of what Hydra is in that context. No longer is this just a spy fighting against an evil organization like James Bond against Spectre. This is now an American soldier fighting against a Nazi. Because that's what Baron Strucker was introduced as. He was a Nazi. Flat out. The minute that they made Baron von Strucker a Nazi leader from the old war comics into Hydra's leader, that completely changed the dynamic and what Hydra was in the mindset of not only the creators, but the fans. And that's an important thing. As soon as you make a Nazi the leader of a organization that wants to take over the world, they basically have become Nazis. And quite frankly, Hydra has always been Nazis. They're a fascistic organization that wants to take over the world. Now, is Hydra specifically the German National Socialist Party the same way that Nazis were? No, I will grant you that. But Hydra being Nazis is not about a specific political affiliation. It is about what Nazis are perceived as nowadays. And that is the key thing about Hydra being Nazis. It's not about their actual comic book history. It's not about what is true in terms of the canon of a fictional story. It is about the perception that people have of Hydra. And quite frankly, the fact of the matter is, if you're complaining about non-comic book readers being mad about Captain America being a Hydra agent and saying that Captain America is a Nazi, don't blame them for not reading comics. Blame Marvel for peddling that idea. Yeah, there's a reason that both fans and people who don't read comics continue to see Hydra as Nazis. It's because they've been portrayed and synonymous with the Nazis any time that they're put in outside media. Captain America the First Avenger. Who was the villains? Well, it started out as Nazis, and then Red Skull decided we have to go even bigger than the Nazis. But they are described as a Nazi deep science division. They are Nazis in every way, shape, or form. I mean, after all, where else was Red Skull getting all those soldiers? Those were Nazi soldiers, guys. Or just look at what they did in Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes, the kids' cartoon. In that show, Nazis are never even mentioned. Captain America never fought Nazis. He fought Hydra. And he fought Hydra in Europe. So basically, that show completely replaced the Nazis with Hydra. Essentially substituting Nazis for Hydra. Meaning that in this fictional equivalent of our world, Hydra is the fictional equivalent of the Nazis. And here's the thing. Comic book characters, from Hydra to Captain America, are what we perceive them as. And perception is what comic book characters thrive on. Comic book characters are only what we perceive them as. Superman can be portrayed as either an omnipotent god or a man with power that chooses to do the right thing. Spider-Man can either be perceived as a character who is representative of everyday people and the struggles of and overcoming responsibility, or he can be perceived as an irresponsible jackass. The Punisher can be perceived as either a hero or a villain. And Captain America? Well, people have had several different perceptions of him, but I'd say that most people who really love the character, perceive him as hope and liberty and truth and justice and everything that embodies what this country should stand for. He is not what this country is. He's what this country should be. And to take a character that is perceived like that by many. Sure, there are some that perceive him as just jingoistic and just America's arrogance. Sure, there are people like that, Mark Miller. But to take a character that most perceive as being about hope and freedom and the great potential of a nation, and to make that character, that hero, a fascist who wants to control other people, who has done terrible things and has lived a lie his entire life, regardless of whether that's actually what's happened in the comics because of all this confusing, oh, it's a mind wipe, oh, it's not, oh, it's real history. Regardless of what has actually happened, You've made that character a symbol for this organization that is about hatred and dominance and evil. And when you've done that, when you put this character and try to say that this is who he is, the perception that you would take a character who is perceived as an American war hero and make him into what is perceived as a Nazi, that's a problem. That is a problem for Marvel, for Nick Spencer, and for fans of Captain America. Stories only have what we perceive they have. It does not matter what a writer intends. It does not matter if that story will then be changed. The fact is, the story being told has a perception that the American hero that you love was a lie. And at that point, your arguments are invalid. And at that point, if you are arguing against people, your arguments are invalid because you are never going to change that perception. Hydra have been perceived as Nazis, and so that's what they are. They are Nazis. Captain America is perceived as America. And so when you make America a Nazi, that destroys what this country... that destroys the perception of this country. So yeah, Hydra are Nazis.